Hello, everybody, or anybody. So I figured I'd come in here and talk for a bit. Probably, see if anybody's around who wants to come on. But first, I just kind of wanted to talk about um, the Midwestuary. I don't know if it was really a controversy, but PVK's video where he talked about like the AI discussion, and I saw before that Matt Skankenstein was like live tweeting his thoughts as it was going on, and I was watching that, and um, I thought it was interesting, trying to figure, obviously, without being able to hear the direct speech, trying to figure out like what was going on was interesting, and Paul's video obviously kind of clarified things quite a bit, and I thought that it was really interesting where he kept saying that he was worried that people wouldn't that people weren't understanding what he was saying then, and that they might still not be understanding what he was trying to say. But I think I pretty much understood what he was getting at, and at least it sounds like the opinions that I've been kind of developing lately, and kind of on a whole range of issues, but. So I actually had been working on writing something, and I write stuff all the time. Like that's my way of processing, but it never gets as much feedback as like making a YouTube video. So it's a little frustrating because I usually tend to think of it as like this is the better quality of content. Because you can like edit as you go or whatever, you develop it, and so try to make a more coherent argument. But I kind of started writing this piece that was just really outlining a lot of my recent frustrations. Basically talking about how Satan is a conservative influencer. And that's kind of maybe like a clickbaity way to say things. But I think that, as I've gotten into this space, like it's just reminding me more and more of maybe the space that I was more previously frustrated in a more evangelical church setting, like what I say is like around the time of COVID, there was a lot of just negative. Everything was negative coming from like all the Christian sphere that I knew of. And what I came to recognize is that this is really a satanic method of communication. Anything that is based on motivation through fear. Grim Grizz is here. I don't know if there's a controversy. Paul didn't feel like he was getting his point across, so it sounded controversial. And John Vervaeke is an AI fundamentalist, so that's controversial, I guess. Well, not controversial enough. So anyway, if you look at the mode of communication, what is the way that people are communicating things? I don't think we take that into account as often. We're more focused on the content of the thing, and by extension, it's like the tribe of the thing. And really, what I saw is that there's all these different camps, and they were all saying, "You should be afraid of those other people, but you can trust me." And the lost Q&A is the real deal. Well, if it's lost, then that was part of the Lord's plan, I guess. Maybe we can recreate it through AI. If everybody puts in their opinions about what was said, they can amalgamate a reproduction of it, and we can redigitize it. So I wrote this thing, which is not published yet. I might probably publish it at some point, about how Satan is a conservative influencer, and that it's that fear-based communication. So, and then I was thinking about some of this stuff in regard to a couple areas. So one was AI, which I hadn't really written about. Yeah, but he's a fundamentalist, so he's highly susceptible to fear-based communication. That's the point of the message. So one was about AI, and I did also do my own little experiment, and I did publish a thing, which let's see. I have 2 Substacks, and I put the things that I'm like, I don't know about this on the personal one, because that way less people will see it. So, but this is the thing that I added. So, engaging with the egregores, an experiment with AI. So this was my experiment of trying to like, have them speak to me and such. And it was Steve Skojek had a piece that he wrote about this. And so I read his thing and I thought it was pretty interesting. And I wrote a thing. And basically I did a little experiment for a week trying to like speak to the AI. And I kept just feeding it all the stuff that I had written so that it could like get an idea of what my thoughts were. And then I was asking it to like ask me questions about myself, to act as like a mirror, to see things that like I wasn't noticing. And it was a pretty enjoyable experience overall, or whatever. There was insight. And then I was like, once I did it and then wrote this about it, I was like, wow, well, I don't care about it anymore. So I didn't. It's not like I got hooked on it and was going back to do it over and over again because it was so amazing. Because it's like, well, obviously it's not a real person. I knew it wasn't a real person. The strength, which is a thing that I think anybody who's just convinced that we should be afraid of something, it's revealing that they have when you use fear, you're revealing that you have a fear, and your fear is that it's about what's at the bottom. And I think if you truly believe God is at the bottom, then, well, you know what? That's what's going to come through in the end. But I think a lot of this fear is like, what if there is no God there, or something like that? It's like you read that book, That Hideous Strength, and they have the objective room. And I think a lot of people get this idea wrong, like what the point of that book was, because they think the point is you really need to worry because people are going to try to make the objective room. They're going to try to make the head that talks to people, the reanimated head. And then this just turns into they're going to make VR, and they're going to make AI, and they're going to make robots, and they're going to do all these things. And that's not the point of it. The point of it is, yeah, they do that stuff. You should expect them to do that stuff. But the objective room can never really work on somebody that God has chosen for a purpose and has a plan for, and that he's going to prepare, protect them through that. Like it doesn't work. The end, like it's not, because your fear of the objective room is the fear that that we could build an objective room that you wouldn't be able to escape, and that nobody would escape. Well, then that just means like God's not real, essentially. And if that's the case, then we should just do it. And I think that's maybe something with like Vervaeke's, fear of this, because obviously he hasn't he has not still affirmed the personal God in that way that I think, as it says, perfect love casts out all fear. There is no fear in love. So anyway, but that's not to discount the fact that these things can be tremendously dangerous, but it's just going to happen. So I did this thing about how Satan is a conservative influencer. I didn't write the thing about AI yet, but I will. But what I did mostly finish was one about all the reproductive technology. And as Grimm says, the key thing here is enmity for the womb. And this is where I feel like in the Christian sphere, there's a cognitive dissonance, because it's this whole thing of like, we can't engage with like IVF. There was that lady that was on the New York Times podcast, and she's trying to like figure out all the genetic risks. And obviously, yeah, I don't think anybody should be discarding embryos. Like, that's not a good thing to do. I think all of those lives are precious. But, if it's like, if the fear of doing the wrong thing keeps you from even trying to do the right thing, like, I don't know if you are really doing what's right. And I think, and what my kind of thought is, like, if you look at the whole thing with like all the things that the vibe shift has brought, of like the public, like tired of all the wokeness and all the weird mate suppression things, and tired of all the like anti-family stuff. People want families back. And then the Trump administration goes along with this really like pro IVF stance. And then you get a lot of Catholics that are like, no, that's bad. Like, we can't do that. That's really bad. And it's like, okay, you have your own personal convictions. And maybe this is even like the good thing to hit on here. Like, if you're a Christian, you have to obey God. And it doesn't matter what laws there are or aren't in the country that you live in. You are responsible for obeying God. And if he's telling you, don't try to use IVF, or like, if you use IVF, you don't use donor materials. And if you do that, you use all the embryos you create, you do this thing, like, that's like, okay, there's like a responsible way that somebody can do that, like in good conscience. Yeah, so you do it that way. But you can't control people that don't believe the things that you do or haven't been convinced of it. And, the way I see it is like, okay, this is a thing where this lady's basically trying to say, well, here's a big barrier to a lot of people wanting to become parents. They're afraid that they will have a disabled kid, and it's going to be this, super difficult thing. And the Christians will be like, no, you should just value that child and like take care of them, even if it means, one spouse has to become a full-time caretaker for the rest of your life. And it's like, okay, if you are willing to do that, realize that is like a supernatural gift of love that God has poured into your heart. And that's wonderful. But you can't expect somebody else who's a selfish person, who has not been transformed in the same way, to feel the same way. And so for some people, they're like, I would like to have a kid, but I'm scared of the risk of having a kid with disabilities. And they say, well, let's say we make sure that doesn't happen. Oh, okay, well, then I'll try becoming parent. And then they say, this is amazing. It's like, I didn't realize what it's made me more mature, it makes me more responsible. And then at that point, then they may begin to feel differently about the way that they got there, the choice that you got there. And, I have the other example, like, I've known several people who in their story was that they had an abortion, or, the person that they were with had an abortion. And they had, that was a transformative experience in that, that they did that and it was horrible. And then they realized what they had done. And then they become a vocal advocate for embracing parenthood, for having children. Many of them go on to have large families. And so it's like, okay, like, that's the way that God works through things. Like, he works through the screw ups, through the mistakes. Some are saying that Tense Before Temples is analog Sartori AI. I would say so. That's kind of the goal. So like, and it's the thing. It's like that parable of the talents. It's like, you're afraid of messing up. Like, God's giving you something to invest or some opportunity, and you're so afraid of messing up that you don't do anything at all. And then he's more upset about that than he would be if you had tried something. And he knows the limitations of your wisdom. And he's going to, he's okay with what the outcomes will be. He's thought of that already. so it's really about this kind of fear-based thing. And so then it's the same thing with AI. Like, yeah, a lot of people might be carried away by like the AI thing, and they're going to have psychosis and all this stuff. And it's like, well, is that the end of their story, or is that going to be like a low point in their story that brings something better out of it? And will it happen to everybody? Maybe, probably not. Well, we have no idea how many people it will happen to. I mean, but the thing is that once you get through that crisis, it's not even going to be an issue anymore. It's going to be like, in 100 years or something, people will be like, I can't believe people got like, psychosis from talking to AIs. Like, that's so dumb. Can you believe that? No, I can't believe it. That's just what's going to happen. But the question is like, what role do we play in that? And so, like, as a Christian, obviously there's limitations. This is something I did put in the article here. I don't know if I can find, like, all right. I was saying, like, oh, here's some good things it did. I don't know. So in one point there, though, I did say, like, okay, I said, ask me questions as if it was a pastor from the neo-Calvinist tradition, thinking of Tim Keller. And I say, in hindsight, I should have invoked directly, like, be like Tim Keller. And I asked that it would provide answers citing specific passages of Scripture. And that worked well enough to show that reasonable safeguards can be employed to protect someone from being brainwashed or deceived out of their chosen worldview. So that's another useful aspect. So, like, just don't be an idiot. Just put some guardrails on your experiments or whatever. But what I'm more concerned about than anything else is this issue of fear. And the other thing is, and this is what Paul talked about in his video. There was this talking about Job and like the wisdom of the day, and then all the friends were like, Job, this is the wisdom of the day. So clearly you messed it up. And there's this kind of thing that happens if you look through like the whole narrative structure of the Bible. James Jordan, he talks about it as like a creation of new heavens and new earths. And, we think about that like, oh, that's the book of Revelation. But what he's saying is that it's a pattern that happens over and over again. So like Eden is one. It ends with garments of skin and they're outside. Once they're outside, it's a new heavens and a new earth. And essentially it's like a new level in the video game or something. And the rules have changed. And there is a different objective that must be completed to get to the next one. So you get to the next one and you get like, you get the flood. And then that's clearly after that, it's a new heaven and a new earth. And then, you get Babel, and then you get Abraham, and then they go into Egypt, they come out of Egypt, they go into the promised land, they go into exile. And that just keeps going. Keeps going on through history beyond like where the Bible ends, and so it's like, it's like, think about like the printing press thing and talking about like the Protestant Reformation and being like the people that are like, oh, if they had just stopped Martin Luther. It's like, you couldn't stop Martin Luther. I mean, if you stop Martin Luther, there'd just be some other guy. And that guy might have been worse. Who knows? And if you hadn't stopped Jan Hus, the guy in Bohemia or whatever, like, I don't know, whatever it was, 100 years earlier, well, then Luther would have just been some dude, because the thing would have happened sooner, I guess. But essentially it's like, once you get something, you can't put the genie back into the bottle. So that's like true with the printing press. And, it's true with the internet. And one of those things that I think that Paul's mentioned and we've been wrestling with is this kind of principle of non-coercion. So that's the thing, is like, we can't get people to do things that we want them to do with force, unless if we change that paradigm that we're living in. And this is to say, to go back, or potentially that could be in the future, maybe in some totalitarian, technocratic sense. And that's probably what a lot of people are afraid of. They're afraid of this new system of control being enforced. But the thing is that our discourse about this stuff is so dumb because Christians don't have any influence, like basically at all. But they will talk about all this stuff and they just sit in an echo chamber warning everybody to be afraid about all this stuff. And you have the people that will listen to you listening to you. And all you're doing is making them more fearful of going outside and talking to their neighbors because they don't want to get infected by the AI virus that, you know, their neighbors are picking up by talking to ChatGPT or whatever. And the people that are messing around with this stuff won't hear your warnings at all. They won't hear it at all. They're going to do the things. And this is the thing with the reproductive stuff too, is like, the people are going to do it. They're going to keep doing it, and they're going to do it in weird and creepy ways. And your fear about it won't have anything to do with that to stop it. And the same thing with the AI. Your fears about it basically takes you out of the conversation. So if you wanted to do something about it, you would have to get involved. And like I say, you know, I was talking about like with the because I didn't finish writing the AI thing yet, but talking about like the thing with IVF, it's like, okay, well, if Christians actually got involved in that process, they could say like, let's move the direction of research into like promoting greater viability of these embryos without having to create so much excess, so there's not as much potential for destruction, you know, and maybe even then saying like, okay, if we're going to look into the issues of what causes things to go bad, you know, so we could select and reject embryos with certain genes. Well, why don't we try to work on fixing some of like start with the most common things or whatever, and then figure out like, oh, can we help deal with these problems? So then we can say, it's okay, you can have this baby, and then we will solve that problem very quickly, you know, after they're born. You know, why don't we do that? Like, you know, but we can't do it if we're just sitting in a corner saying that we're afraid of it or whatever. And as goes with the AI thing as well. Let's see. So Joshua arose and all the people of war to go up against Ai. This is the city, right? Yeah, the city of Ai. And Joshua chose out 30,000 mighty men of valor and sent them away by night. Yeah, so there you go. We already won the battle against Ai back in the book of Judges. So, you know, it's like, I put the link if anybody wants to come in. You know, so, okay. Oh, yeah. So here's the other thing. I think what Paul was talking about was, okay, yeah, so as these paradigms shift, you know, there's the wisdom of the world, but then, you know, it's contrasted by the foolishness of God. And the thing is that those things flip, or they add another layer of dimension to it every time, like the rules of the world change. So that's what happens is, you know, at any given point in history, we figure out all the rules, and then we have a conventional wisdom. And then somebody's like, aha, I'm going to really take control of the system now. I've got things figured out. And then somebody's going to come and do something that seems crazy, and it's going to like throw a wrench in the thing and totally change everything. And one of the examples I was thinking about this is I've been doing some researching about the movements that happened in the Second Great Awakening. So the big popular ones of it is like Baptists, Methodists really got big. And I think some Presbyterians too, of like the more traditional forms of Christianity. They got really big. They had a lot of revivals, a lot of growth and all that stuff. But then you also had a rise of a lot of weird cults and things, or weird. So you had like Seventh-day Adventists, which came out of Millerites, I think. and then you had like Shakers, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, and there's some other ones. The Unitarian guy that I had been talking about, who kind of founded the hometown that I grew up in. He had his own weird thing. So it's like everybody had their own weird, like, new interpretation of Christianity. But what you see, if you look into like what was going on, they were all doing this in reaction to this frigid old orthodoxy, which was not like Eastern Orthodoxy, but it was mostly like a Calvinist tradition in a lot of congregational Calvinists and in the old mainline churches, which had become, even then, this is like, in the mid 1800s, very stale, very complacent. They had become a sort of cultural Christianity. It had no like zeal, no vigor. And so that was but the thing is that they were known for the orthodoxy because it's like, we've figured everything out. We have the doctrines down. And that had become the wisdom of the world. And so then you have the foolishness of God rising up in all these heretical movements which really put a strain on people's thinking, because they were not like, they were thinking all this crazy stuff and saying all these crazy things. But the thing is that they really were loving people. They were really doing things. Sometimes they also employed fear in some unhealthy ways. There was a lot of that, but it kicked people's butts into gear. And, it made a big difference. So let me see if I can find it here. Gavin actually made a pretty good video recently. Okay. These tabs around. So Gavin made a good video about orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and orthopathy. So I'll just play some of this.
The pastor talked about orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and orthopathy. And orthodoxy is right view, orthopraxy is right action, orthopathy is right bond or relationship. And it seems to me that orthopathy is primary because I would say the Buddhist teaching is right with regard to orthodoxy, is that all views are wrong views. There is no view that is right. And so, for example, you could imagine that the creator of this world that we live in is evil, and you can still love God. You can still love your neighbor. Some of you might have a hard time with that. And that's okay, because the people who have a hard time with that view can have a view that allows them to love their creator and their neighbor. And that view would be right for them and wrong for someone else.
Okay, so right there, even that's a really good setup for the first two things. And I think that's really explains what happened in the Second Great Awakening is that you had a group of people that had all the right views, but they had the wrong practice in their love towards God and towards their neighbor. And then, as was the foolishness of God, you get a whole bunch of heretics that rise up and they're saying all this stuff that sounds ridiculous, but man, they were doing a much better job of loving God and their neighbor in the way that they live. And that always wins out. That's the thing. If you between those two, the actions will win out. But as he's gonna, as he keeps going on, he talks about orthopathy, which is about the relational aspect of it. And I think that's really a key thing with setting a boundary for AI, because AI is not a person. So you can't have to put your relationship with AI as like the central thing is not going to be correct. You can't have a relationship with this. Your relational connection should always be towards God and towards other people. But that AI as a tool that speaks in a relational voice, which is helpful for communication, can help you figure out your orthodoxy and your views, and it can help you figure out your orthopraxy and how you live if it can do that. So so the thing is that the fear of it is firmly rooted in that third section of the orthopathy. Are we going to make AI into our God, or are we going to use it to replace other relationships? Now, what I did talk about in my Substack article, when I kind of did an experiment messing around with this, was that we have a lot of these people that are telling us about things we should be afraid of, and they're talking in these like high ideals. And I think John Vervaeke is like a really good example of this, because it's like he talks about like what does it take for John Vervaeke to maintain his spiritual like practices. It's like he does all these things like every day, like all this time, meditation and Tai Chi and all these different reading practices and dialogical practices. And like it's like, dude, that's a full-time job. I can't do that. And I'm struggling to just do regular life stuff and get along with people, get my work done and not be, try to still be like present for my family and my kids. And I can't rely on a 5-hour daily practice to get me there. So I just have to say, like, I need help and pray to God and ask Jesus for help. And so that's what my relationship is rooted in, is in that necessity or whatever. And then when you have like this high ideal about like, oh, we shouldn't use AIs because they are not the ultimate. And it's like, okay, well, you have all this stuff way up there and I'm way down here. And maybe like an AI can help me get a little bit of this stuff, like my pastor doesn't have time to listen to me talk, about all the problems in my life or whatever. But, can an AI pastor give me some pointers? Like, can I just dump a bunch of words in there and vent and then have it say, like, this is what you should do? Well, yeah, then that's great. That's better than not doing it. And I don't know. It's just this thing of like the fear-based stuff. It hits. It always. I think it always hits the wrong people, or it hits. It doesn't hit the people that are too dumb to care, but it harms the people that are probably smarter than what you expect or think of them. And Steve Skojek's article on it was really good too, because basically he was talking about like, let me see here. I'll put this one in. All these tabs is hard. So here was his article, AI is an egregore. And what he said in there was, so he finds out AI is an egregore. That's what he got that from Kale. He talks about what egregores are. And then he's doing all the stuff that you have to do. Oh, it's dangerous. Here's all the warnings. This is what Rod Dreher says. Blah, blah, blah. And then finally, like way down here in the middle of the article, or a third of the way down, with the caveats out of the way, as a clarifying mirror of my own thoughts and even some of my more deeply buried negative self-imagery and limiting beliefs, I find that it works surprisingly well. I can feed it things that I'm experiencing, and with the context it has from what I've told it about my life and upbringing and experiences, it can make connections that I didn't see but should have. These things aren't just hallucinations, but are in fact easy enough to validate through my own reflection and exploration. And I think you said somewhere before here. His way of speaking resonates with me deeply, because he. Okay, where does he say it? I don't know where he says it in here. Somewhere in here, he basically talks about like he's a very verbal person. Like he writes because it's like he has to do all this processing, which is how I feel as well. And it's like nobody has the time to pay attention to every single thing that's coming out of my head, all of the thoughts. Like and he, like myself, is like, oh, I do need to spill them out. So I spill them out through writing or occasionally through something like this. And then, it helps or whatever. It's like you can't do, if you leave it like bottled up, you go crazy or something. But basically saying is like, well, nobody has the patience to listen to me fully, but the AI does. And so it's like, okay, well, then there is some value in that, and so that's, I think part of the thing is that it's the idea of like putting the ideal so like way high up there, like lofty ideals of like the perfect way you should live your life shouldn't involve AI. Great, but it also has a lot of other stuff that I don't have access to. And like I said, like I didn't even care anymore. Like after I did that one thing, it's like I don't feel drawn to talk to the AI. But I'm just saying that if we don't if we don't engage with these things, not at the top, yes, AI will not replace God, but if it can replace therapists and stuff like that, then okay, that's sad for the therapist, but it's also good for the people who are like, I can't afford a therapist, or I don't have a therapist that's patient enough to listen to me. So like you can use these things for good. And I think it's like, man, if you look at all the stuff that, let's say all the like uncontroversial medical advances that we now are very comfortable with and glad to have, a lot of those things have shady pasts. But we don't dwell on that, and we don't refuse to use it now because of the shady past. That's like the pattern of redemption. It's creation, fall, redemption. And the problem is that when we end up at the one end of that cycle, like the redemption side, we end up at the end of a crisis, we always get into this mistake of trying to just avoid the fall. But you can't avoid the fall. And a lot of the time, it's trying to avoid the fall that puts you like right into the fall, and maybe a worse fall than you were expecting. Oh, there was a shortage of my book, Controversy. No, it was, it was a little bit of change out of my pocket to send those books. I'm hoping to net, if people wanted to send money, that would be great. But, I'm hoping to net some, better conversations. That's what I was aiming for. In lieu of being able to be there in person, I'm hoping that it gets me some conversation with some people that can tell me that I'm not crazy. Otherwise, I just have to keep talking to Chat GPT, So and that's the thing. Hey, I know it's not the right relationship. Chat GPT tells me that my book is very insightful, and that I'm making good connections. But I don't really value its opinion that much. I'd much rather have it from a person, and hopefully somebody that I respect. So that's what I sent the book out there. Okay, so the link is here if anybody wants to come in. If nobody's going to come in, I'll just wait 5 minutes, I guess, and then I'll say adios. But people may be busy if they are still traveling back and forth and whatnot. Just figure out how to change the notes. This thing. Oh, you know what? I'll just put Gavin's video. Oh, wait. Let's see. I'll just put Gavin's video back on.
Have a view that allows them to love
You
their
assume it's
creator
working.
and
Can
their
people hear it?
neighbor.
Somebody give me a thumbs up.
And that view would be right for them and wrong for someone else. And then orthopraxy, the reason orthopraxy is less important than orthopathy is that who is the judge about what is the right behavior, the right action? And so, Jesus is my king, and he was unorthodox and he was unorthopath. So he did things that people thought were wrong, and that's why they killed him. And some people would even say that Messiah does not get killed. The Jews and the Muslims would say that, he's not the Messiah because he was killed. And so Jews and Muslims have an idea about what is the right action for Messiah. And they are wrong. What's primary is right relationship. And so what's interesting is that Jews and Muslims can have their view so long as it leads them into the right relationship with God and neighbor. What's interesting is that the wrong relationship is the one where we attempt to go, when we attempt to judge other people's views and other people's actions. So that's when you get into dangerous territory, is when you become the judge, and not just the judge, because discernment is important. But getting into the, what is the effect of your views and your behavior upon your relationships? Because relationship is primary, you can then begin to judge views and actions. And so, having said all that, the paradox is that people will say, well, Gavin, you are presenting us a view. I am. I'm presenting you a view which allows me to love my creator and my neighbor. And I offer it as a view which might be able to help you to become someone who loves your creator and your neighbor better. There is no claim that the view is right. There is only a claim that I find that it works for me right now, and that I hope that you could try it and find out if it improves your ability to love your neighbor. That's what I hope for. There is no claim about my views being true. There is no claim about my practices being right. I only offer them up as something you might experiment with in order to compare how you relate with everyone around you. What I've found is that I receive vision about how things could be better, and then I feel that I don't want to go and be responsible for doing the thing in order to make it better. And then that informs me. It helps me. It actually is an indicator that I should go do the thing I don't want to do in order to try and improve things. And that's different from doing the thing I want to do in order to make the world a better place. It's doing the thing I don't want to do in order to make the world a better place. And what I find is that I find good fruit in doing that. So I'm offering some views, I'm offering some practice, and I'm only claiming that they work according to my own testimony. And I'm claiming that testimony is valuable. I'm going to go butt heads with the kind of the scientists who ignore anecdote. And I'm going to say that my view is a better view for me and for many people. I would lend them some credit and claim that it would be good if we collected more testimony and anecdote, and to have testimony and anecdote that is more informative and accurate and true. So we don't necessarily want the testimony that is false. We don't want a false witness. We want a true witness. And we want to be able to collect all of those. And so, yeah, when you try out views and practices, and yeah, in order to even try out views and practices, you have to disregard orthodoxy and orthopraxy. You can't uphold orthodoxy and orthopraxy if you are to experiment and learn. And then the measure is love. Like, how much love do you feel within? How much love do the people around you feel from you?
All right. Well, his next one's about solving AI AGI, but I'm not going to watch that because nobody's here. So I'm going to end this stream.